Executive Order 13603, National Defense Resources Preparedness. Well, as you can see, March 16th, 2012, Barry Soetoro Hussein Obama, Kenyan, the traitor, signed into law the National Defense Resources Preparedness Executive Order. Section 101. The purpose. This order delegates authorities and addresses national defense resource policies and programs under the Defense Production Act of 1950 as amended. So the policy under Section 102, the United States must have an industrial and technological base capable of meeting national defense requirements and capable of contributing to the technological superiority of its national defense equipment in peacetime and in times of national emergency. The domestic, industrial, and technological base is the foundation for our national defense preparedness. The authorities provided in the Act shall be used to strengthen this base and to ensure it is capable of responding to the national defense needs of the United States. Part 2 is the priorities and allocations. This is the part where all of these following secretaries and agencies get to confiscate our stuff. The Secretary of Agriculture with respect to food resources, food resource facilities, livestock, veterinary, plant health, and the domestic distribution of farm equipment and commercial fertilizer. 2, Secretary of Energy, all forms of energy. 3, Secretary of Health and Human Services with respect to health resources. 4, Transportation, all forms of civil transportation. 5, Secretary of Defense with respect to water resources. 6, Commerce with respect to all other materials, services, and facilities, including construction materials. So what this means is in time of war, which they didn't use, they used national emergencies and preparedness. Now, technically, this could also be used in the event of a severe, catastrophic, nationwide, natural, if there is such a thing, weather emergency. But basically, it's allowing all of these agencies to commandeer, requisition, take, steal everything for themselves. Now, if we lived in a perfect world, it would be understandable that in times of national emergency or war, that everyone would kick in where they could with food, water, vehicles, everything. If you remember back in World War I and II, factories and warehouses were transitioned into ammunition manufacturing and weapons building facilities, staffed predominantly by women, because that's all that was left. This act also is what is used and will be to reenact the draft. Do not expect any deferments. There may be one, and that will be an age deferment. At some point, you're simply too old. Although I think most of us would take people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s from the old school over the feminazi pussies we got running around now. Back in the day, if you were enrolled in college, you didn't have to go. If you were flat-footed, you didn't have to go. If you were married, you didn't have to go. There were any number of reasons you could use to not enter the draft, and it kind of worked out because there were more than enough patriotic Americans who volunteered. Now, you still had to sign up when you were 18 and put your name on the list because many of the deferments did not affect you when you were 18. They happened a few years later. But it'll be interesting to see what happens when the Democrat regime reenacts the draft, because currently in this trans military, if you declare as a unicorn or a kitty cat, you don't have to do anything. You're basically being paid to be in the military, but not have to perform any of the duties required of someone in the military. Just because you take a shit in a litter box. Now, make no mistake, very, very likely this executive order 13603 will be used to confiscate all food and resources, but not for war, for the purposes of being able to totally control the masses as the Democrats facilitate a total economic, societal, moral, ethic collapse. Now, going back to the draft. Currently, you've probably not heard this, although I mentioned it in a video. Part 5, employment of personnel. Thousands of former military pilots now working in the private sector for all the big commercial airlines with their close to $1 million salaries have been sent letters that they are being reactivated. These letters cannot be refused. They're being recalled because there are no or not enough pilots for all the planes that they weren't going to send, never going to send. We will not send F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. And I made a video about them unmothballing thousands of helicopters, transport planes, C-130s, fighter jets, everything, with a crew of between 200 and 300 per plane to get it ready, 2 to 3 weeks, and approximately $1 million per plane to send it over to Ukraine to be blown out of the sky before it even gets off the ground. That's kind of a nonsensical statement. You can't be blown off the sky if you haven't got off the ground. But you get my point. The planes will land and never likely take off again. So, a draft will likely be coming, but that will be to corral military-age men here in the U.S. that may end up being a threat to the regime. When, ironically, the 20 to 40-somethings in this country are not a threat to the regime, they're an asset. It's people 45-ish and above. Leave us here, because we'll take our shit back. Well, you guys are playing games over in Ukraine. All right? Keep an ear out for this. Pedojoe and the demo-hoes are secretly planning to reenact the draft and confiscate all foods, goods, services, supplies, but none of it is for a war. It's all in coordination with the coming collapse, takeover of the U.S. That's all I got for now. Like, share, subscribe, notification bell. JT, signing